So what I wanted to do today, and I will be very quick on some topics, is 2 words on Vytal, what we're doing, then give you a very quick intro into an ecosystem for reusable packaging, and encourage you to think beyond your own position, but who else are potential players in an ecosystem, and how you can collaborate with each other. And then we'll dive into the financial model. I will discuss first the revenue side and then the main cost items. And look, and then whenever you have questions, please feel free to interrupt me. It can really be interactive. I don't want to give a lecture ideally, but if you have questions, just raise your hand and we can discuss them immediately.
Thank you.
I'm not very shy to answer all questions openly. So very quickly, I don't know whether you know what Vytal is doing. We are a reusable packaging system, which is basically, so we provide reusable packaging for food and drinks. One of our core features is that we track, in most use cases, each container individually. So each of our containers has a unique ID, and we know how often each container has been used. The most used container has been used 357 times so far. The average container has been used close to 20 times so far. So by tracking each container throughout the system, we know exactly which impact we generated. And this is actually the essence of our, or what we have technology to track. We don't produce containers ourselves. We hardly do washing. We don't do hardware. We don't do logistics. We really focus on the software development and the sales side, and ensuring a smooth and frictionless customer experience with reusable packaging. This is an analysis. I hope it works. We analyzed, so we have around 800,000 containers in the system for individual restaurants, and we picked the 500 with the most, which traveled most. And this shows you how a reusable system can work in practice. So you see the dots, and each of the dots is a reusable container, and you see how they are traveling throughout Europe. And that's what excites me about our digital model, that we really see that people borrow a coffee or get a coffee in a reusable cup in Munich, take the train to Berlin, and return the container there. So that's what you can see you really see that in the data that people are using the system. So we operate in 2 different business segments. The first one is where we started, the individual restaurants and canteens, and we work with KFC, with Pizza Hut, for instance, but also with large canteens, with universities. Typically, we provide the containers to our partner. They hand it out to their customers. They return it and they wash it on site. That's the most ecological setting you can have, because you don't have to transport the containers. They just circulate in the system out there, and at end of life, we collect them and recycle them. We have around 7,000 partners in 23 countries. As I said, 800,000 containers in the system. And so far, we had nearly 12.5 million users of these containers. So that's one business element. And the second sector we are now in is the whole closed loop systems for events and venues. And here we typically provide a full service to our customers. We deliver the containers to the venue or to the event site. We support on-site operations. At the end of the event, we pick them up again. We send them to our washing partner. We clean them, store them, and rent them out for the next time, for the next event. Last year, we started this business and did 150 events in the first year, and we had 3.3 million containers for the events. It's a special portfolio, and we already have 7 million users. And this shows you also the impact potential and the business potential of the 2 business units. 5 years in the open system, we had 12 million users. 1 year in the event business, we already had 7 million. Especially in a country like South Africa, I think you have to be very careful which partners to choose. I think the event space, the football stadiums, the venues, the music halls, is probably better. So we are unfortunately we lost Francois. He had agreed to become a franchise partner in South Africa, but unfortunately he had other plans and withdrew from the contract. So we're now in 23 countries. The green countries we operate ourselves. The lilac countries we franchise out to a local entrepreneur who used our technology and brand to build their own reuse business. And this is just one graph out of our database to give you a bit of a feeling how the data look. These are the Evonik canteens. They are a large German chemical company, and they've been a long partner with us. And they avoided alone more than 631,000 containers. And actually, they received back 632,000. So some people got a container, coffee at the railway station, and returned the cup or the food container in the canteen. So they're a net receiver, which is quite interesting to see that people also use a reusable system outside the workplace and return the containers at the workplace. And the green line are the checkouts, and the yellow line in the graph are the returns. And you see how closely they are correlated. And this is the efficiency of a digital system. It really provides an incentive to return the containers. We end up at a return rate of more than 99% with our system. And that's something we are very proud of. Very briefly on the ecosystem. So basically, reuse is an interaction between a restaurant and a user. And you don't need a system. Each restaurant can say, look, I will buy a reusable container, hand it out to my user and take it back. They can use trust base, say you can have it, please bring it back. They can use a deposit, let's say 100 Rand or 50 Rand, whatever, or 10 Rand. You can come up with any number, and they give it the cup to the user, get 10 Rand. When the user returns the cup, then he gets the money back. So basically, you don't need a system, but as I've shown in the map, the system becomes more attractive to users and more efficient if you add additional restaurants. Now, imagine you have 2 restaurants and 2 users. You start seeing crossovers that the user picks up a container at one restaurant and returns it at the other restaurant. So people start using the entire system and the additional convenience because they don't have to go back to this space where they come from, but where they got the containers from, but can choose any location in the system. But then you start to need a system operator, and this is the role we are playing. And we have to redistribute the containers between the restaurants because some restaurants might get back more containers than they hand out, so they run out of, so they pile up stocks where the stocks at other restaurants get depleted over time. So the system operator needs to balance the stock levels between the restaurants. Obviously, there's space for more than one system. In Germany, we have 2 large systems, us and Recap. Recap also had been active in South Africa for a while, but unfortunately, they withdrew a couple of years ago. So you can have two independent systems, and both systems work next to each other. Obviously, the more systems you have, the less efficient is the whole ecosystem because you cannot return your cup, which you got from system 1 at a partner of system 2. So having one system is obviously the most efficient and the most convenient for the user, but there's no reason why you only have one. And then you have along the value chain, you have certain suppliers. So you have designers and producers of reusable packaging. There are plenty of producers globally. Not sure whether there's a local producer in South Africa, actually. Then you have dishwashing service providers. So we work with partners who have their large industrial washing equipment, and they wash for us in the event business. Then you have hardware producers like reverse vending machines, dispense equipment, and so on. And the last one, you have logistic service providers who help you with transporting the containers to your partners and back. So these suppliers can work with both systems. And then you have a number of facilitators like the city administrations. Sometimes they help um, to fund reusable packaging. Sometimes in Germany, two cities introduced a tax on single use to support the transition to more reusable packaging. They are important players. You have NGOs who provide guidance and advocacy, and you have industry associations, you have development organizations like the GIZ, obviously, and you have academia, and they also work with the systems and to complete the ecosystem. So that's an ecosystem, how reusable packaging typically operates in a country or a region, and would be great to have something like that also in South Africa. There's several roles everyone can take. So some specialize on the washing, some specialize on the production of the reusable containers, some specialize on the operation or in the operation of the system. So there's there's a lot of potential for collaboration across different partners, or what we sometimes see that you have fully integrated system players who offer everything from the packaging to the washing to the logistics to the systems themselves. My business case logic looks more at the system operator side. So how can a system make a viable business case out of reusable packaging? So we already talked a bit about segments. What we typically differentiate is on the one hand side canteens, like University of Stellenbosch canteen or University of Cape Town. They have a canteen. That's a closed setting where you have a large volume where most people return their containers on site. Then you have the individual restaurants, the mom and pop shops on the high street. Then you have the big QSR chains like Kentucky Fried Chicken, Burger King, McDonald's, and so on. Tricky to work with based on our experience. And then you have the whole event and venue business as discussed, and then you have the e-commerce, which we don't work in, but this is another sector for reusable packaging. So reusable shipping boxes for e-commerce. Um, when you how to build an ecosystem, you can differentiate between takeaway consumption. For instance, when you order your coffee in a canteen and you go for your way home, you take the cup with you. And when you order at Uber Eats, you get the food delivered to your home. Or when you get a parcel from e-commerce from Amazon, you also get it. It's kind of takeaway. And then on the other hand, you have also on-site consumptions. For instance, at events, nobody goes to a festival and takes the beer home. It's typically consumed on site. The same is true for cinemas, for amusement parks, zoos, or in-house consumption at these fast food chains. So you can separate between takeout food and on-site consumption. Our vision, and we're unfortunately not there yet, is really that the canteens are kind of closed loop systems. So people bring back the containers on site, but the takeaway food and the e-commerce packaging, ideally they are return stations in the public space. So when you walk home, you drop your packaging in one of these return stations. They are then emptied by a logistics service provider and brought into a highly automated central washing hub. Imagine there's a washing hub in Cape Town or north of Cape Town to cover the northern area. They will collect all the return boxes in Cape Town, but they would also have the capacity to wash the containers from the stadium in Cape Town, from the cinemas in Cape Town, and from zoos or Cape Town Zoo if there's something like that. So the idea is really to bundle the most large volumes into the washing hub, because then you really get economies of scale, and this will make reuse cheaper, even potentially even cheaper than single use. and then you redistribute, and that's the last step of the chain. The clean packaging has then to be redistributed. After the concert, it's washed, it's stored, and it's rented out for the next concert. The cups from the cinema go back to the cinemas to be used over and over again. So that was just a very quick intro to the ecosystem, to the different players. If you have any questions, just interrupt me. If not, I will continue in a second. There is a question.
Thanks, Nintendo.
Hi Fabian, hi everyone. You said that chain restaurants like McDonald's and the rest are really tricky to work with. I just wanted to ask, why is that? Like, what's the challenge in having reuse systems, especially in restaurants?
In restaurant, it's actually like I think it's fair to say that quick service restaurants are optimized for a linear business model. They get everything delivered to the back door. It's consumed, and then they have a massive trash pile to be carried away. There's nothing in this restaurant is designed to be reused over and over again, apart from the tablets, the trays. I think that's the only item they actually reuse. And it's part of their philosophy, the quick service restaurants in Germany, where we have a law and that they have to offer reusable packaging. They went to the highest court to fight against any regulation which forces them to move more towards reusable packaging. So I think it's not part of their DNA, and they see it mainly based on our experience, and speaking very openly, and they see it it doesn't fit into their business models. For on-site consumption, there's a law in France which prescribes them or which bans the use of single-use and for on-site consumption. So if you eat at Burger King, it's the same in McDonald's in France, you will get reusable packaging, and that works. Actually, I've been there. It works quite well. It's like in any restaurant where you get reusable plates and made out of porcelain or stainless steel forks and knife. So if there's regulation, they will comply. But it's based on our experience and also experience of other players in the market. It's not. They're not forerunners for reusable packaging. That's what I meant.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
And then Leah's got a question.
Yes, thanks so much. Thanks, Fabian. Maybe you answered that and I missed it, but you mentioned that South Africa was on the list before, right?
Yes.
And you have
Yes.
cooperated with Francois and other fellows that are unfortunately not part of the group today, of the core. I don't want to put you into a tricky situation here, but why is South Africa basically off the table?
No, it's not off the table.
Or what were the reasons? I think that would be great also for the other participants to understand where the gaps were.
Look, yeah. I think that Francois got a bit cold fit, I think, and he will listen to him later. But it's obvious market for reusable packaging. We tried before and they failed. So Francois had Reusify and it never reached scale. And I think South Africa is not there yet to introduce reuse in a very broad sense. I think there are pockets where you could start impactful reusable packaging system in university canteens, for instance, with specific food catering companies, with stadiums and so on. So there is a market, and we see that there's a market. For instance, one of our most successful franchise partners is in the Dominican Republic, and nobody would have thought that reuse is a thing in Dominican Republic, but he works specifically with canteens, there's a large port in the Dominican Republic. So he works with catering companies who deliver food to the port, and they do everything in reusable containers. Or he works with a baseball school from the Chicago Cubs, which is based in Dominican Republic. So there are specific niches or small areas where you can start with a reusable packaging system. I would not recommend to start with individual restaurants, but with events, there's definitely something you can do. We just did an event. Our franchise partner did an event in Albania, also another country which is on top of the list of countries where you think reuse is a thing. We work with our Irish franchise partner, works with university canteens. So I think there are some good elements to start a business and to start a system. And I wouldn't bet on the individual restaurants. They are hard in Germany where we have regulation. And I would really focus on some areas where you can get volume quickly and focus on. And we would be very happy to find a partner to work in South Africa. It's not off the table for us, but it's not a country where we focus on. We are a for-profit, for impact company. We have money from external investors, and we have to invest our money in the big markets. So we focus ourselves on Central Europe and North America, if this makes sense.
Okay. Thanks.
Very welcome. So I just mentioned it. The idea is, and that's why we talk about financial models, to build a for-profit for impact company. We all work, and I think it also relates to this group. We want to make a difference in the world, and we want to achieve a positive impact. We want to solve a problem of this planet. But one element of sustainability is also financial sustainability. So you need to build a company in which the revenues are larger than the costs, which means that there's something that the revenues, they cover all the costs, and in the end there's a small profit at least to be able to survive and to invest into growth. So and that these are the two sides of the coin, which I will look at now. And to start with the revenue side, the biggest question is, whose problem are you solving? It's very interesting. When we started the business, we talked to people and we asked them, hey, what do you think about single-use packaging waste? And you always get the answer, I hate it. I always get upset, and I always have a bad conscience when getting a single-use coffee cup and so on. So people know that it's bad. But our mistakes was that we thought, okay, then it must be a good business model. But in the end, it became very clear that there's a huge intention-action gap. People still today, they tell you they would love to use reusable packaging, or they always use reusable packaging. So 70% of the people say that, but only 1% actually chooses reusable packaging in Germany. So the replacement rates are super low. And the biggest questions, and we thought a lot about it, is whose problem are you solving? You can say, look, the user wants to behave sustainably, and he gets sustainable, and with our reuse option, he gets a sustainable and high quality packaging. So the coffee stays warm longer, and the food looks nicer in a reusable container. They get the good feeling of doing something good for the environment. So you could assume that you could charge the user for the service and say, look, user, the coffee €3.50. If you want to have it in a reusable packaging, in a reusable cup, you pay 20 cents extra. Because you get the better, you get the good conscience and the good feelings, and you get the better quality packaging. That's one element to think about it. You could also say, look, we charge the restaurant, because the restaurant, they can say, look, we are a sustainable company. This will attract additional target groups. They save the garbage fees. They save the cost for the single-use containers because they don't have to buy single-use containers anymore. In some cases, they are compliant with regulation. So you could also think, okay, I would charge the restaurant. Biggest challenge with reuse is that and it hurts to say that you don't save a private problem, and you save a societal problem. You save a way, you tackle a waste problem, which litters our cities, which puts microplastic in the environment, which spills our marine life and so on. But it's not someone's private problem. And that's the biggest challenge with all these reusable business model, and that's why so many failed. Because on the one hand, people say, "Oh, I'd love to use it," but they don't use it. Then there's no willingness to pay by the user, and they say, "Look, if it's more expensive, why would I use it?" And for the restaurants, even though there are some benefits, it's not super obvious why they should work with you, or not, or the benefits are not convincing enough for all restaurants to work with you. So we decided to mainly monetize the restaurant. So we have a pay-per-use model for our restaurant partners. They pay a small fee whenever they use one of our containers, and typically the costs are lower than the cost for single use. We only monetize the users if they don't behave correctly. So we charge the user if they don't return the containers. So roughly 1% of the users don't return the containers, and then we charge them a fee, and they can keep the container. So we do most of our revenue comes from the restaurant side. Some revenues also come from the user side.
Fabian, Josephine has a
Yes.
question for you. Please, Josephine.
Hi, Fabian. I wanted to ask, you mentioned earlier that is it the Dominican Republic that you work in, or?
Yeah. Mhm.
So how I'm just in terms of all the other countries that you work with, I think that one leans more towards the global south. With the penalties that does it work there as well, the same in terms of people giving their credit card numbers? Are the amounts the same, or do you find that you had to tweak it a bit just because of the context of the country and where it is?
Very, very, very good question. In fact, he works with catering companies, so he doesn't use our technology. So they don't. In his case, not the individual consumer is responsible, but the catering company. So he provides a service to the catering company and says, "Look, every week I deliver you 1,000 reusable containers, and I pick them up from you, I wash them, and I deliver them back to you." And then he charges a small fee per use, and a fee for the lost containers. And this is the risk of the catering companies. So I cannot answer this question. In fact, you can, in the system, in our technology, you can adapt the price, the checkout price, and the price for the consumer for every container type. So we are flexible to adapt the cost, but for the Dominican Republic, I cannot really say what the consumer acceptance would be.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So one big question about reuse is how to get it back. So because you want to reuse it, so that means unlike a single-use cup which you sell once and it's gone, you have to get back the reusable cups. And basically, there are two different models. One which has been employed in Germany for more than 100 years is an analog deposit. So you, as I mentioned earlier, you give, I don't know whether there are deposit return schemes in South Africa already. I don't think so. It's very well known with bottles. So for instance, you pay a rand deposit if you buy a Coke bottle, and then if you return it, you get the rand back. That's a deposit system. It also works with coffee cups. With coffee cups, you're typically already in the area of €2 to €3 deposit, which makes it actually quite expensive for the user, or perceived expensive. And when we have these food containers, you need €5 to €10 deposit, and that makes it really hard, or makes a lot of additional value in the system, where nobody makes money on. So the challenge is, if the deposit rate is low, like €1, you will get a lot of acceptance, but the downside is people will not return the containers, and that's what we see with deposit-based cup systems in Germany. They have return rates between 70 and 80%. It doesn't sound too bad, 80%, but when you imagine you hand out 100 cups, you get back 80, you hand them out again, you get back 64, you hand them out again, you get back 56, I think. And after 10 uses, you only have 6 cups left in the system. So it's super hard to be better than single use if your average cup is only used 5 times, because the return rate is so low. So a low deposit is easy to implement, and the customer will accept it, but it provides a very low incentive to actually return the containers, and a low return rate is associated with low environmental impact. So if the deposit is high, like €10 for our containers, then you get a very strong incentive to return the container. But people will say, look, my lunch costs already $8. Now I should pay 18. And it's a psychological hurdle to be overcome. And especially since most users don't see the immediate benefit of using reusable packaging, adding €10 deposit is really cumbersome. Another thing with a deposit is that it doesn't provide any incentive to return the container quickly. You get, even after 3 years, you get the same deposit. So you could store the cups or the containers for a couple of years in your kitchen cupboard. They're not used. They don't, or use them only privately. They don't avoid any single-use packaging, and you still and you still get the same deposit back, and that's also critical. Not only which share of containers come back, but also how quickly do they come back, because when they come back quickly, you can wash them and hand them out again. And then with the deposit, I don't know what the regulation in South Africa is. Actually, if you hand out a cup against deposit, in Germany you have to keep the money separately, because it's not your money, and it doesn't belong to you. You just got it as a deposit for the cup. So whenever someone comes back and brings back the cup, you have to be able to pay out the deposit again. And in Germany, you also have 0% VAT, value-added tax, on deposit. So this depends on the local regulation, which I'm not familiar with, to be honest. That's not my area of expertise. The other thing, the other model which we are employing, and actually Tim, my co-founder, he did his PhD in psychology, and he worked with an analog deposit system, and he realized that, look, this doesn't make sense from an efficiency perspective. It's just like in the library. When you go to a library in the university, you don't pay €30 or $30 deposit for a book, but you register, set up your account, you borrow a book, and if you don't return it in time, you are charged. And this is pretty much the model we employed with our digital model. And this allows us to set rather high penalties. So €10 deposit for a bowl is hard to implement and to convince the customer. €10 penalty if you don't return it just provides a strong incentive to return the containers. Also, we can, since we track each individual container, we can also track gift deadlines and say, look, this container is called Alice. So you borrow the container Alice, and you now have 14 days to return it. And within 14 days, you have to return this specific containers. So we provide an urge or a time pressure to our users to bring back the container. If they need more time, they can pay €1 to extend the return deadline by 1 week, and this is an additional incentive for the user. This is an additional stream of income to our business model. What's
Fabian,
the question?
I just want to just ask a question. I'm looking at specifically like corporate companies. So just say, for example, they have a canteen and you're
Yes.
busy running a reusable system with that company. I mean, would you kind of give them some sort of certification that they can put up in their reception area, so that it's always visible when you go and visit these companies? You can see, these guys are working with the reuse system. ABC company is not. So that kind of just gives you free advertising per se.
Absolutely, and this is one of the reasons why we focus on canteens, corporate canteens, because they have a strong CSR department and they need numbers. So from us, they get live impact data. So they get live numbers which they can put on their website, and they go up live. They can print out certificates, and that's really one of the value proposition of a digital system, that you always know exactly how many containers you have handed out, how many single-use packaging you have avoided. That's one of the reasons why we work with these canteens. And in a canteen, so the first one is they have measurable impact, which is important for their own reporting. The other thing is, a canteen has typically a monopoly. When you work in a car manufacturing plant, there is just one staff canteen. And if the canteen director says, "Look, we now switch to 100% reusable packaging," people will not eat less food there and will go anywhere else because you provide additional inconvenience. They will just adapt their behavior. And I can show later a couple of slides where you see what really motivates people for switching to reusable packaging. And so the motivation, one is the positive motivation that you get the data, and then the second argument for closed loop systems is that you have one authority to decide, look, let's switch to 100% reuse, and they will do it.
Thank you so much.
So on how do you monetize partners? So when you we as a system operator, we buy the containers. So we have the initial investment, and then we have to see what do we charge our restaurants. And you can either do a flat fee and say, look, €30 per month to be part of our system. This is the recap system. The benefit is obviously for you as an operator that you get safe revenues, because you can calculate 12 months times €30. Per partner, you get €360 in revenue from the system. You don't need a digital model. You can do this at low cost. The challenge is at low cost. When a restaurant only hands out, let's say, 1 cup per day, this cup costs him €1 because they pay €30 per month as a system fee. So if they have low volume, it becomes very expensive for the restaurant. The upside is obviously if they hand out 100 cups per day, it still costs you only €1 per day for the restaurants. So the flat fee protects revenues for you as a system operator, and you don't take the acceptance risk. If a restaurant offers reusable packaging and nobody asks for it and nobody uses it, you still get some revenues. On the other hand, the model we are employing is a pay-per-use model, because we think it's fair that a partner who uses a lot of containers pays more than a partner who hardly uses any containers. And it also links directly to the cost of single use, because the partners know what their costs for single use are, and they know what the costs for a reusable system are, and they can make the calculation. But the challenge is you take the acceptance risk. And we did this a lot in Germany, but we moved away from it. Nowadays, we still have a pay-per-use model, but we ask for a minimum offtake agreement. So every month, every partner has to buy at least for 10 to 15 euro checkouts from us to secure us some base income from the partners. Otherwise, we would just buy an endless amount of containers, send them to our partners, and if they don't use it, we would not generate any revenues. Any questions on the monetization?
Good from my side, thanks.
Super. So we have additional revenue streams. So our core business is renting out containers to restaurants. Some revenues come from the users who decide to buy more time to return the containers or decide to keep the containers, where we sell the containers then to the user and make some margin. But we also have return boxes, we have dispense equipment, we rent out mobile phones, we rent out service stations and return boxes to offices. So some offices, they don't have their own canteen, so the staff always eats out or orders food via Lieferando or Uber Eats and Volt and Deliveroo. And to those office buildings, we rent return boxes, which we empty them. So the office can then provide a service to the employee and can say, look, you can order food in sustainable packaging, but you don't have to walk back to return the container. You can just drop the containers in our office. So that's something we offer. And then you can sell additional services, you can sell logistics services, you can sell washing services, you can charge for the training of staff. So there are different revenue streams you can look at. That's on the revenue side. Any questions on how to generate income from reusable packaging? Yeah. Then let's go to the cost side. The core asset is obviously the reusable container, the reusable cup, the reusable food container. Buying one of the reusable container is obviously much more expensive than a single-use container. So buying a reusable container is around €4.50. Buying a single-use food container in Europe, it's around 25 to 35 cents, because the cheapest alternatives are banned by law. I think in South Africa you still have styrofoam and so on, so the costs might be a bit cheaper. But per use, the cost of a reusable container are much lower than single use. Nevertheless, reusables depreciate over time. So the more often a container is used, you start seeing scratches, stains, burning marks from the microwave. So you cannot use a container endlessly. As I said, the most used containers in our system has been used 357 times. That's a very well-performing containers. I would assume that the average food container can be used 150 times. A coffee cup, the average cup could be used probably 400 to 500 times. And so the math are super simple. When you buy one reusable container, you pay €4.50. It can be used 200 times. So if you buy 200 single-use containers, you pay €96. I calculated here with 48 cents, which is a very sustainably looking container with a cardboard box and a lid made out of this bioplastic, which comes with a lot of promises. So there are cheaper alternatives on the market, but for high quality reusable single-use containers, let's 48 cent is one option. So you see, per use, the cost of a reusable container per use is only 3 cents, whereas the cost of using one single-use container is 48 cent. Even though you have washing costs and you have logistics costs for the reusable container, you can be cheaper than the single-use alternative. And this is the business case actually behind our model and behind any reusable packaging system. And Josephine, in 1 second, I'll just make the same example for the cups. It's even more obvious. Look, you buy a cup for €1.50, you can use it 500 times. So per use, it costs you 0.3 cent. So it's a fraction of 1 cent, which you have to pay in depreciation for a cup, whereas a single-use cup with lid costs you around 14 cent. So you can be actually much cheaper with reusable packaging. Josephine.
Sorry, Fabian, I'm not sure if I missed it. So with the cost per use for the reusable cup, did you mention that it includes the logistics and washing or
No,
not?
it's
Okay.
excluding. It's just
Okay,
the
okay.
depreciation.
All right.
Depreciation. So if you use a cup which you buy for €1.50, 500 times per use, you have to pay 0.3 cent for the use.
Okay, no, I understand. Thank you.
So yeah, that's just the depreciation. To your point, there are more costs to it. So someone has to return the packaging. A single-use container you just pick up, you walk away, you throw it somewhere in the park, or if you're nice in a waste bin, or you dump it at home. But a reusable cup has to be brought back. So that's an inconvenience and additional cost for the customer. Then there can be a cost of return infrastructure if you use reverse vending machines, return bins, and so on. There's a cost for the infrastructure. There are costs. It's a single-use container you just hand out. In a digital model, you have to scan the containers. In an analog deposit model, you have to pay back the deposit upon return. So that causes additional costs. Washing, the container has to be washed. Either it's done by the system operator or it's done by the restaurant. Someone has to wash it. And then the system operator, as we discussed earlier, has to rebalance the stock between the partners. So so even though on a per use basis, the use of a reusable container is so much cheaper than using single-use containers, to offer reusable containers, all cost factors in cheaper than single use is a real challenge, and especially in markets like South Africa, where you don't have a ban of styrofoam, for instance, where the single use alternatives are super cheap. Where you have no tax on single use. So in Germany, in 2 cities, we have a 50 cent tax in single use. And that makes reuse always the cheaper option, because you can do many of these costs. All of these costs can be covered, and you are still much better than single use just by avoiding the single use tax. The problem with just a second, Tony. The problem with the single-use cost is that the restaurant owner, the only thing they see is the private cost for buying the single-use. They buy a single-use cup, they see 10 cent, 12 cent on their bill, and think that these are the cost of the single-use container. But actually, the single-use container, the littering cost, the CO2 emission in production, the micro plastic, the chemicals, the PFAs in the environment, the deforestation, and everything which is not factored into the price of a single-use cup which they buy on the market is not seen by the restaurant owner. So the restaurant owners, they get the full cost package for the reusable containers. He can make a calculation how long it takes them for scanning or handling deposit, what are the costs for washing, and so on. So they full transparency on the reuse side, but for the single use side, they only factor in a small fraction of the cost, namely the private cost for single use. Tony.
Just a quick question. Purely interested in knowing, are China very big on reusable and sort of businesses of this nature in China. Do we have any information, Fabian?
No, they are big in producing packaging of all kinds, single use, reuse. They produce everything because they have a very efficient injection molding industry. But I have never heard of a company in China doing reusable packaging.
Thank you.
Not to my knowledge. There's a bit of something a bit is happening in Thailand, some initiatives in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in Korea, but I haven't heard much in anything from China, and also I haven't heard much about Africa, to be honest. The only thing I know is the little activity going on in South Africa for the moment. So there's a lot in Europe, obviously driven by regulation, a bit in the States, in Central America. Starting in South America, there's a player in Chile, there's one in Costa Rica, there's one in Argentina starting. So they're all smaller movements there, but China hasn't been very active so far, to my knowledge. So we discussed now the variable cost for renting out reusable packaging. So it is a good business case. If you buy this container, let's say for €4.50, you rent it out 200 times for 20 cents, you make €50 in revenues. Huh? So you buy something for €4.50, you make €50 revenues. It's a 95% margin. It's actually quite a good business, even though you have to cover potentially washing costs and so on. But the challenge is it's a very low value business. So each container, each cup you rent out is only 10 cents in revenue, or a food container is 20 to 30 cents in revenue. Yeah. So you need a massive volume to cover your fixed costs, and to pay for one employee, and to pay for tech development and maintenance, to rent a warehouse, to cover insurances and so on. And this is what breaks the neck of most reuse companies, and many went into bankruptcy in Europe, because it's a business with high upfront costs because you have to buy the containers, with low cost revenues per use and somewhat high fixed cost. But it with a large volume, it can be a very attractive business. And a large volume, this is you get at events, you get it in stadiums, you get it university canteens. And that's always our recommendation. If you start reusable packaging, start with the high volume use cases to generate significant revenues. So the last idea I want to give you, I don't know how savvy you are in business and cost calculation, but we employ a contribution margin logic, which is kind of an onion model. So in the center you have your revenue, so all the money you make, and then from that we deduct what costs us when we lose a container, so when the customer doesn't return it, or when the partner loses it, and how much does it cost us per use for one container. Then in the event business, we have the washing cost, and we have the cost for the equipment we have to buy, mobile phones, return stations, and so on. And this is the contribution margin one. And this is when you have a trading business, the equivalent of your purchasing cost for a good, and your selling cost. So you should always be positive on the CM1, because if your revenues are lower than your direct cost, then you're selling. When you scale and generate more and more business and more volume, you will go deeper and deeper into the reds. So that's a CM1. Then from the CM1, in the next layer, we deduct the cost for our key account management, the team who works with our partners, our customer support, and our logistic costs. And that's the what we call the contribution margin 2. And if you're positive on the contribution margin 2, you can scale, because then the rest of the costs are fixed costs. And the larger, if you generate a positive CM2 and your business grows, you have more money left over to cover your fixed cost. And the next cost block we deduct is our warehouse, our central operations cost, and this gives us our CM3. And then we deduct our sales team, our business development cost, and this gives our CM4. And then after the CM4, we deduct all the head office costs, the marketing team, the finance team, the HR team, our product development, our tech team, and so on. And this gives us our CM5, or our profitability. And what is why this thinking is important is, never do a project, an event, if it's negative on the CM2. If it's negative on the CM2, you can grow the business as much as you want, but you will never become profitable. For a moment, and with funds from external investors or donors, you can accept a business which is negative on the CM3, 4, and 5. But because you need time to build up long-lasting business relationships, but you should never do business which is negative on the CM2. And when you build a financial plan for your business, this is a structure you should think at. And these are basically the buckets you have to think it. What are my revenues from my users, from my partners, then what are my container costs, what are my washing costs, what are my equipment costs, and then what are my team costs. So if you build a financial model based on this structure in Excel, you will have a good information when you will reach profitability and how much money you need to set up the business. Lastly, we strongly believe in collaboration. I think especially in a country like South Africa, it doesn't make sense to introduce 5 reusable cup businesses which are then in competition among each other. It's better to really specialize on certain elements and collaborate. You could, for instance, share the same tech platform if you want to have one, or you bundle volumes in washing and logistics. Or one partner focuses in the ecosystem on the washing bit, the other one focuses on the sales and on-site support for restaurants and events, for instance. So we strongly encourage collaboration in the ecosystem to really make the whole business case viable. Yeah, that was it already from my side. We still have time left to answer all your questions. Josephine.
Thank you for the presentation, Fabian. It was really insightful. I just had a question in terms of the revenue section that you presented. So you said with profitability, it's usually at scale where
Yes.
it's profitable. But even if it's at scale, what's how many years until the business is profitable? Or is it immediate profitability when you're doing it at scale?
No. In our case, we are VC finance, so we have money from external investors who believe that we can build a huge system which is highly profitable, because you have such large economies of scale. Because once you're big, it's a super profitable business, huh?
Mm-hmm.
But it takes a lot of investment to get there. In a country like South Africa, look, our investors invested in us because they believe we can become the global leader to manage reusable packaging. That's their hypothesis. In a country, and that's why we don't have to focus on profitability that much. We can say we invest in our tech team, and we invest in our brand and our partnerships, and we will become profitable later. That's a bit like Amazon. Amazon didn't make any profit for 30 years, and now they're one of the most profitable company in the world, because they were VC financed. But I think Amazon hardly sold products products for less than they bought it, and that's the CM1, CM2 logic I'm showing here. So we still don't do projects which are negative on the CM2, because each project itself must cover its own costs, even though we are not big enough to cover all our tech development costs and so on. For someone in South Africa, I think you don't have to make this I want to become the global leader story. It's really, you should focus on building a profitable business, not from scratch. You cannot build on day one, you're not profitable, but
Yeah.
start small with few containers, acquire the customers first, talk to customers, sign contracts, then get some containers. Start with a small washing machine. You can get a small washing machine for $5,000. I don't know the prices in South Africa. You can even get a small industrial washing machine, maybe for $10,000. And then you start, you hire your first person, or two people who do the washing only when you need them. And then you sign the next partner. You buy additional containers, and then you generate more business. It's more the way our partner in the Dominican Republic operates, and provide full service. We don't do that. As Vytal Global, we don't do washing and we don't do logistics. But in other markets, you need a different model to reusable packaging. And he found his sweet spot. He bought a small washing machine, bought the first 1,000 containers, starts renting them out. Now he realized, I signed 2 additional customers. He bought another 500 containers, and so on. And you can also build a business gradually, and this is definitely the right approach, in my opinion, for someone in South Africa.
And sorry, just on that, so you got VC funding, is it?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Because they believe that they hope, they trust us, that we become, that reuse is a global thing in all countries. Tony mentioned China, but in all countries there are some initiatives, and very few people believe, no, we will recycle everything in the end, or we will develop a packaging material which just dissolves in nature when we throw it away. So hardly anybody believes that, and most people think reuse has to be one part of the solution going forward. And they believe us that we can become one of the largest players globally to operate reusable packaging, with our tech enablement to make it more efficient, to interact with the consumers, to provide additional marketing methodologies. So our technology helps us to make reuse more efficient, to manage complexity. Just to give you an example, at the Christmas market in Constance, and there are 70 gastronomists, so 70 booths, and we have 25 different container types: forks, knives, cups, small bowls, French fry trays, and so on. And every user can return each container type at every booth. And then you have deposit handling, and we have to calculate how many containers have you delivered in clean to which booth, what have you received back in dirty and in clean from each booth. And our software allows to manage this complexity, and that's what we're actually building. But it's well beyond anything you need in the South African market. It's super straightforward. Find your first customers, do a low-tech model, and get started. Tony.
Leah, ladies first. You can go first.
Yeah, well, thanks so much. I think, Fabian, this is super interesting. And I think this, in general, this accelerator has been super interesting. What I always struggle a little bit, being based in South Africa, is like we always have like a very Eurocentristic solutions, right? And Fabian, thank you for bridging the gap also to like the South African market, your Dominican Republic market, and how things can be adapted. However, I think it's I think we have to look into tailor-made solutions for the local markets, right? And
100%.
what,
And we became much more flexible. We started, hey, our digital model is everything with the app, and now we do everything. And we say the customer decides, I want to have analog deposit, I want to have trust based, I want to have
yes,
do the washing myself. We want to do it. You really have to be flexible because the market is not big enough, not even in Germany. You need to provide a solution which provides a value to your customer.
yeah. No, and also I would like to what Josephine, the questions Josephine was asking, because we are working closely with her as one of our pilot projects under the grant, and Qualisa is really amazing, and also developing their own digital solutions, right? With QR codes tracking what has been returned and how to roll it out. And also Francois with his model, I mean, at the end of the day, it didn't work, but he's still passionate and he's part of the accelerator. So, yeah, I think thank you for sharing everything today. I just wanted to say, like, sometimes it's a bit difficult to have all the European solutions, and I think you bridge it quite well today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. So you really have to see what the market needs, and if the market is less mature, if they don't have their own washing equipment, because they never use porcelain and they just use single use, then and get a small washing machine and do the washing as well. And really, just like Porfirio in Dominican Republic is doing, and really be flexible what you offer to your customers.
And also maybe sorry, maybe one other thing just coming to my mind, and I know I'm just the recorder today, but sorry, I'm having questions. Getting investors, I mean, you were mentioning, like, well, a washing machine costing $3,000 or $5,000. It is a lot of money at the end of the day. How do you really attract?
Yeah, no, we don't wash ourselves. And look, the
that
$5,000 is the cheapest washing solution.
Yes.
The 1 hour washing partner in Germany costs 600,000 euro.
No, exactly.
And they can wash 15,000 cups per hour. But I think if you do 15,000 cups a month in South Africa, that's already a successful business. So so you really have to start small. I think we see money. You could get some philanthropist investors in South Africa into the business. So either you have people who say, look, I've made my money somewhere else. I will now help young entrepreneurs with an impact mindset, which I can help with business advice and some funds. That's feasible. Then you could get some strategic investment. And say, look, I'm a cup producer, for instance, or I operate a logistic company and I want to get more business. And I think this whole circular economy thing is something which will also take off in South Africa. And I want to position myself with an investment in the space. This is probably something which is more relevant or maybe there are some funds which are specialized in the South African market, but the global investors. So building a reusable packaging system out of South Africa on a global scale is, I believe, super hard, and then attract global investors.
Okay, and now I'm putting you on the spot, and that's my last comment. Would you be available for our participants today to give advice? Can they reach out?
Absolutely. Look, 100%. That's why I put my name on it. Like
Okay.
I'm not afraid of competition in South Africa, honestly, because we will not win, and I can be very honest, will not win the market in South Africa. And none of our investors ever ask, hey, why are you not in South Africa? Still, I've been to South Africa many times in other parts of Africa, and that I think the solution is much more needed in South Africa than it's needed in Germany. But unfortunately, the market and the people are not there yet, and I'm very happy to support any local entrepreneur to work with it. I have my personal experience and maybe biased opinion that developing a tech solution for the South African market will be quite hard to make a sustainable business out of it, because it just adds to the fixed cost. Huh? It just adds to the cost. And we've seen that in many small markets, people went into insolvency because they invested in the technology. Technology is fixed cost, and if the market is small, then you need massive scale if you operate a tech solution yourself, because the costs are there. You have server costs, you have app development costs, and so on. But try it. Nobody learned anything without trying, and that's why I strongly recommend or encourage people to try it. Very happy to share our experience.
Oh, great. So I'm gonna pinpoint you on that, right?
Please.
Okay. Great.
Tony, you have
Thank
a
you,
question.
Tony.
Yes, no, thank you very much, Fabian. I must say, and I thought it beforehand, that this portion around the costing is really, really interesting and so important. And before I get to my question, I just want to give you a little bit of my background so that you understand why I'm asking this question. So I've spent my entire life in the cosmetic industry. And when you do costing in the cosmetic industry, you have a specific costing and a margin that you would like to reach in terms of your true cosmetic product. Because when you sell a true cosmetic product, believe me, you're selling a dream. So you can charge a lot of money. You can charge a lot of money to sell someone a dream. But if you're selling someone a roll-on for underarm, you've got to be very, 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 how would I say, cost effective. So my question to you is, and maybe before I get there, I would like to actually say to Leah, I really wish we have and hope we have some time to invite you again when more of the partners are present, to maybe repeat, even if it's just your costing section on your presentation. But what I'm saying is, if you looked at your contribution margin and you got to your CM2 and you were sitting at a break even, so in other words, would you go ahead if it was a break even at CM2? Just a question.
Yes, absolutely, because you always learn, and in this case, if you break even at the CM2, you learn for free. So because all costs are covered, and if you have a proper cost accounting, you can still say, like, I didn't make money with the project, but I learned something. I built a customer relationship. I generated some impact. I avoided single-use waste, and I still added, and I didn't lose money on that. The challenge is more with proper cost accounting and taking into account all the real costs. But a zero CM2 event is something I would do for all the reasons mentioned. But we typically are well positive on the CM2. On the CM2, we are in all our business sections, except for the US, where we're just starting, and it's a tricky market. We are positive on the CM2 already. That's and you have to be in your standard model, because otherwise you just scale negative business. So.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions? Fabian, is this pretty much the end of your presentation? I'd just like to hear if there are any other questions. It's really, really been so interesting, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thanks for the good feedback. While you're asking for a question, I will just show you something else. I just want to share, because we had the discussion. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet. Maybe. Sorry, I went to. But please ask questions. I really just wanted to show some slides, which I always love to share, because people come with especially the motivated people. They come with so much enthusiasm about reusables, and I think they all fall into the same trap we fell into when we started the business. People just have to do it, and people love it, and everybody I talk to, they love what I'm doing, and it must be a business case. And it's unfortunately it's not. Let me quickly see whether I can share my. Doesn't work. Share again. Picture.
There
you
we
can
come
switch.
through now. Yeah.
Super. So that's what I mentioned in the introduction. When you ask people, 70% claim that they will or want to use more reusable packaging. In fact, in Germany, despite the regulation, replacement rates are between 0.3 and 7%. So there's a huge intention action or say do gap. And here what we've tried already. The regulation in Germany, where every restaurant is obliged to offer a reusable packaging option to their customers, doesn't work. And the same regulation is in place in Netherlands, Portugal, Sweden, Poland, with the same effect. Nothing. We won €1 million in out-of-home campaigns. You can argue about the motive, the slogan, but at least it cost massive attention in Germany. No effect. Printing flyers and posters and put them at the POS, no effect. We piloted a lottery that whenever you got a Vytal cup or a Vytal container, it was an entry into a lottery and you could win €500 per week. No extra sign up, nothing. You just have to choose reusables and then you get a lottery. 1 to 2% uptake effect, nothing. In Switzerland, the city administration paid two Swiss franc for each user. So that's €2. I don't know what the rand is. I think it's around 30 rand. Every user got 30 rand just for switching to reusable packaging. None did. We tried gamification. We tried to give incentive to restaurant staff members to promote reusables. Nothing happens. We try to foster competition among the restaurants and say, look, you're leading this week and you're number one. No impact. Nothing really worked apart from three things. And that's the positive news. There are things that actually work. The first one is the University of Sheffield. They have been working with us for years. And it's a university with 10,000 students, and they only had 25 to 50 users per week. It's really embarrassing for such a large organization. And then they said, look, let's introduce a coffee for £1 in a reusable cup. And the numbers went up to 500. So the factor 10. Massive success, at least in relative terms. So we did checkouts increased by factor 10. But then what happens in the next week when the discount was removed again, the numbers dropped and the sustainable impact is only 30%. So people switch to reusable packaging if they have a massive benefit in terms of lower prices. But which business can afford to give away a coffee for 1/3 of its original price? It's a huge subsidy, which has a very limited effect. And this shows you that the app is not the issue. People download the app, they set up an account, they borrow a coffee cup to get a coffee for £1. And they've everything set up. They understood the system. They know how reusable work. They have the app, everything. And then as soon as the incentive is gone, 2/3 of them say, I will go for single use. So that's the bad news. The second thing that works, and these are the canteens of Evonik, which I showed earlier. It's a chemical company. A very good partner with us for several years. Every week, very constantly, 2,000 users. Every week, 2,000 containers were borrowed in the canteens, except for Christmas. Obviously, you see the Christmas breaks here. And then they said, look, as of 1st of January 2024, we will charge 50 cents per single-use container. And suddenly the numbers doubled. So even all of the colleagues, or 50% of the colleagues, were using reusable packaging. It was well accepted. Everybody knew how the system works. 50% of the people decided to go for a single-use container. But as soon as they had to pay for single-use, they changed their behavior and they switched to reusable packaging, because now back to the whose problem are you solving? Because as soon as they save money by switching to reusable packaging, they change the behavior, and that has a massive impact. And the last example is a university hospital. They had been with us, actually a quite good partner. They had been with us since May 2022, started with 100 checkouts per week, went up to 300 checkouts per week. So increasing number. And then they said, look, it's working. The system is working. We don't have single use anymore. If you want to have a coffee, either bring your own or rent one from Vytal. And that's what they introduced. And the numbers went up from 300 per week to 1,800 per week. And they stayed quite stable. This is a seasonality effect down here. So ever since then, the numbers are pretty much the same. And this shows you what you think which works to motivate people. And what people tell you about reuse is basically not true. The only thing that actually works is either you give a massive discount on the food nobody can afford, or you put a price tag on single use, or you just say there is no single use, we just have reusable. I'm sorry, please live with it. And people live with it, and they don't change their purchasing behavior. They will just change their behavior and will start reusing reuse. That's at least some somewhat optimistic comment to end my presentation.